Hey guys, it's Gaming Universe 13 here with my 100th video special, and this is the reason why I haven't been uploading it for a few days. I've been preparing for this, and I was just trying to get this whole thing set up, and I'm doing something special. I'm going to be talking about the Zelda timeline, which has been the subject of debate ever since the existence of the first 5 games, which was Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, Zelda 1 and Zelda 2, and fans have been debating what order the games go in ever since that time. So I'm just going to give my theory. Be sure to comment on the video after, watch the entire thing, discuss it, say what you liked, what you didn't like. This is my theory. If it's similar to anybody else's, I didn't steal it. This is solely off of research I have done from other theories and connections and videos and in-game summaries. So let's get started, and I will start with saying that it is a linear timeline. Now, the biggest subject of debate in this is whether the timeline is a linear timeline or a split timeline. Well, it's a linear timeline according to my theory, because if in the Ocarina of Time you go between a 7-year gap to your adulthood and childhood respectively. Now, in the adult timeline, you're doing things that are 7 years later after the child timeline, and in the end, you're fighting a Ganondorf that has transformed into the pig-like creature we see in most games. However, people think the timeline splits because Link goes back to his childhood due to Zelda teleporting him back with the Ocarina. However, it's a linear timeline because, one, it's time. So basically, if you're going to make a timeline out of anything, the time is just going to be a continuous motion, and there's no such thing as a split in time. Also, Link has the Ocarina in Majora's Mask, and Zelda took it from him at the end. So technically, he wouldn't have the Ocarina if it was a split timeline. So there's that also. Thirdly, there's a lot of similar characters throughout the series, so if there was a split in time, then many characters wouldn't show up in later installments of the series, but they do. So that's my explanation of it, and now let's start at the very beginning. Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. Now, this is the first game in the timeline for a few reasons. One, there is no Ganondorf. Instead, we have the Wind Mage Vaati, who is the main villain of the game, and without a Ganondorf, this would take place before Ocarina of Time, where the Ganondorf's origins show up. Also, it explains how Link got his hat throughout the entire series, so that's another reason, but it's a minor reason. But the biggest reason is that there is no Master Sword. Instead, we use the Force Sword, which will show up in a few later installments, way later in the timeline. Also, the Zelda of this game will be put to sleep for something later on. I'll explain that as we go. Next game is Skyward Sword. Now, not much is known about this, but we already know it happens before the Ocarina of Time due to the creation of the Master Sword in this installment, and if you have seen any of the trailers, you would see that Link is a full-grown adult or teenager, and so it's going to take place after that. But this is the end of Link 1, as I like to call it. So there's going to be a few different Links throughout this timeline, but this is the only 2 games that feature the original. Now we are going to go to Ocarina of Time. Now, this is the 3rd game featuring the first adventure of the second Link. Now, this has been the subject of debate mostly in the timeline theories because of a lot of reasons. First off, the time traveling. Now, a lot of people, this is where people change their mind about this and that with this timeline theory. Throughout the game, you will time travel between your childhood and adulthood, doing different tasks, such as creating a storm at a windmill, or etc. and so forth. And in the end, you'll travel to your adult timeline to fight Ganon. However, he turns into a pig at the end. Now, a lot of people think that this is the reason why the timeline splits, because of the different branches of the story. However, this can be proven false for many different reasons, which we will go into later on as they show up. But basically, when you first time travel, you wake up 7 years later as an adult. Now, I can explain why you're waking up, but that will happen later. Also, this is the first game of Ganondorf as a human. Now, Ganon mostly throughout the series is a pig-like creature, but in this game he's a human like a few other installments, which we will get into later. And he is one of the key components of my timeline theory. Another key component is Impa. Now, Impa is the watcher, I guess you could say, of Zelda. Now, you see her and Zelda ride horseback away from Ganondorf right before you first time travel, and then you get the ocarina from her at that same moment. Now, there is a few handful of games where Impa is present, and she will become like a key component later on as well. Now we are going to move on to Majora's Mask. Now, in my linear timeline theory, the games will just continue on in a straight path. It won't split between the adult and child. It will just keep going. So and since Majora's Mask is already the sequel, then we're going to go with this one. Now, Majora's Mask is the sequel for a few reasons. One, it takes place right after Link puts the Master Sword back in the stone at the Temple of Time. And you see him at the beginning riding on Epona, looking for a lost friend. Now, this is where it starts to become a little confusing, I guess you could say. First off, the Master Sword is barely present. There's no Ganondorf in this game whatsoever, so that's a huge change in the series. And also, it's one of the shortest games. No mention of the Triforce is there. The only reason it's considered a direct sequel is because, one, it is a direct sequel, and two, there are a lot of similar characters, like the Happy Mask Salesman, who shows up as a shopkeeper in Ocarina of Time, or as the Happy Mask Salesman just traveling around in Termina in the Majora's Mask series. Next, we have Twilight Princess. Now, this is considered this is what I consider the last game where Ganondorf is a human. And this is where Link is actually a farm boy at the beginning of the game, and I can explain this. Throughout the series, Link has been traveling through Termina looking for a friend. After the events of Majora's Mask, nothing was really happening throughout the series. So Link now has taken up farming, and that's why you see him as a farm boy at the beginning of the game. He's really not doing anything at the time. And now we have a few problems throughout the game that can really confuse some people, so we'll go through those right now. First off, Ganondorf supposedly dies at the end. Now, he has a sword stabbed through his chest. You can't really live through that, and so many people think that this is the death of Ganon, because he was supposed to be executed at the beginning, but then he escaped. And now here he is at the final battle being killed by a sword. Now, you can be confused by this because Ganon's dead, but I can prove that this is not the real death of Ganon, because there is another battle where he is human for a little bit of it in the Ocarina of Time. Now, this is the second part of Ocarina of Time. This is the adult part of it. This is when the parts in the game where Link is an adult. Now, Ganondorf died in Twilight Princess, right? No, he didn't die, because he is the final boss in this game. And so now, if Ganon's still alive, he never died in Twilight Princess. He's the final boss of Ocarina of Time, so that just announces any idea that Ganondorf died in Twilight Princess. As you can see, Link was fighting Ganondorf as a pig form. This is when he first obtained the Triforce of Power, and he turns into a pig, as the story is told later on in the timeline. Also, this is the last game of Link 1, because Zelda teleports Link back to his childhood. Many people consider this to be the break in the timeline. However, if Link still has the Ocarina throughout this entire timeline. So it wouldn't be a split in time. And now we have a problem. Link is now is in a forever loop between his childhood and his adulthood. As if the timeline is linear, now he's in a Link the second is going to be through an entirely cycle of games. He's going to stay in the Ocarina, and he's going to go back to Majora's Mask over and over again. So we can't really find any games left with him inside unless one is made. So let us recap. First is the Minish Cap. Then we have Skyward Sword. And these are the games with Link 1. Link 2's timeline has the Child Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask due to similar characters, Twilight Princess being next as the last game with a human Ganon. Then we have the adult portion of Ocarina of Time where Link is sent back to Majora's Mask in this forever loop of 3 games. Now, without a first Link, we're going to have to continue in the timeline without him. So what's next? Well, A Link to the Past. Now, a few reasons for this being the first. One, Link is gone, and it tells the story of Hyrule at the beginning of the 7 mages locking Ganon in a golden land where the Triforce is, and how the hero of time is absent. Also, at the beginning of the game, Link is woken by a message from a girl saying, "Help me, my name is Zelda, I am in the castle dungeon." Now, this is the first game of Link the Third, because Zelda is introducing herself to Link while he's asleep in bed at his uncle's house. Also, this is the first game where the final boss is a Ganondorf in a pig form, and this is where human Ganon is basically absent. We're always going to see a pig-like Ganon throughout the game, and so we have to put this after Ocarina of Time's events. Next, we have the Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Now, at the end of Link to the Past, in the final battle, Ganon's gone, and now Link is going to have to fight his minions since he is no longer the final boss. However, there are a few reasons why this is next. First off, we have these 2 witches. I'm sorry, their names are absent right now, but they have appeared in the Ocarina of Time game and Majora's Mask. As you can, let me explain. Majora's Mask, you see them as potion sellers or a boat tour person. So this is before Ganon has gotten to them as their minions. But in the Ocarina of Time, in the adult timeline, in the adult portion of the game, you find them as a boss. So this is the first instance of them being a boss. In this game, they are a boss now, and depending on which game you play. Also, oh yeah, we just explained that in Majora's Mask. Sorry, I haven't memorized this entire thing. And now, lastly, this is a sequel because you fight Ganon after you enter a series of codes after defeating each of the bosses. Next is Link's Awakening. Now, this is a sequel for a few reasons. One is because at the end of a single game of Seasons or Ages, if you've only played one of them, you'll see that Link fights a boss on a boat at the end. And at the beginning of this game, Link's on a boat during a shipwreck. So that's like the key connector of this whole thing. So the recap right now is Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time Child, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time Adult. Then we go to Link the Third with Link to the Past, where he is introduced by Zelda and fights Ganon for the first time. Then we have Oracle of Seasons and Ages as a direct sequel to it, due to it being the minions of Ganon trying to revive him. And then we have Link's Awakening due to the boat scene. So now we're going to go to Link the Fourth. Yeah, there's going to be a few links in this, I think 4 or 5. And it starts with the 4 Swords. I'm sorry there's no cover art for it yet. 4 Swords was treated as its own sub-game during a re-release of Link's Awakening. Now, the reason this is next, well, we'll get into a lot of the details of this later. But basically, there's no use of the Master Sword or Ganon in this game. now you're using a sword called the Force Sword instead, and this gives the power for Link the Fourth to split into 4 different links. When they go to only 4 different lands. Now this is a sub game. Now many fans say it doesn't count. However, it does due to the sequel featuring the same Link in Four Swords Adventures. This is a direct sequel and it's treated as its own game. Now, we're still using the Force Sword here, and it's a direct sequel because it's not because of the title, but because similar characters and whatnot. Now, we fight Ganondorf again as a pig with his trident. Now, the trident is only relevant until now. This is the last time you see the trident with Ganondorf right now. And then we go on to the original Zelda. Now, this is where I can really explain why Four Swords comes before this game. First off, you get the Master Sword. And the famous quote, "It's dangerous to go alone, take this." You obtain the Master Sword for the first time in the Zelda series. However, Link the Fourth is getting the sword for the first time in this game, in the cave. Now, you wonder who the person who's giving it to you is, and this is the reason why Link the Fourth hasn't gotten the sword yet, because he's been using the Force Sword all this time. Well, I would say Impa is the person giving Link the sword. As you can see, they're both wearing some brown clothing and long white hair. So, I would say that Impa has given Link the Master Sword in this cave at the beginning of the first game, as a hope to save Zelda, who is captured by Ganon, who is using magic, not a trident now, magic. And, now the Triforce is broken. Now, Link is not trying to get the Triforce of Courage. He's trying to get the Wisdom Triforce, which is held by Zelda. And next, we have Zelda 2, where he is now trying to get the Triforce of Courage. Now, this is a sequel because, well, Link's now a young adult, teenager. Now, the Zelda you're saving in this game is a sleeping Zelda that has been asleep for about a millennium, 1,000 years. And this is probably Zelda 1. Now, let me explain. In Minish Cap, you have Zelda be put to a deep sleep for a long time. Now you're trying to awaken this Zelda now. So there's a strong connection to the original Link, and there's a bunch of similar characters. Now we are going to go into Link the Fifth. This is the final Link in the series with Wind Waker. Now, here's the thing about Wind Waker. Everything in Hyrule has been flooded. So there's no way to get to Hyrule. And I can explain how Hyrule was flooded. And you have to travel the seas. Now, this is a map of Hyrule through both the first and the second game, original games. Now, a key component of this, and this is the only landscape reference you can actually make with this timeline, is on the left middle area, you see a bunch of mountains. And within these mountains is a mountain called Death Mountain, used both in the original game and also this game as well. However, now, as you can see, most of it is water. There's a few land pieces, like a few islands here and there. Now, Death Mountain in Ocarina of Time, it was originally just a big mountain. And you could barely see any water around it, just Zora's Domain and the river surrounding Hyrule Castle. So really, not that much water now, but in the first two games, you could see so much water surrounding the area. I mean, I would say 20% of it is water. Now, in the Wind Waker, you only got a few islands in each, like a few islands, that's it. The land is just a few islands, nothing too big, and now it's just a bunch of water. So what's wrong? Well, Hyrule's flooded. And now you have to sail around on the seas, trying to recover the Triforce so you can stop Ganon in the Hyrule that's flooded. And the boat you're on is the original King of Hyrule. Now we go to Phantom Hourglass. Now, this is the sequel because, one, it's a direct sequel, but I guess I can explain that a little more. First off, there's similar land features. Most of it is still water, and also Zelda, who was on the boat with Link at the end of the game, is now on aboard Ganon's boat. Now, Ganon is a human in these games, but I think it's the entirely recreation of Ganon. He was reborn, actually, because, let me explain, throughout the series, Ganon's minions are trying to revive the killed Ganon, and they have to use Link's body for this job. Now, Link, the fourth, is dead. Okay, he was, because the flood, he was probably killed in that flood, so we have no indication of him whatsoever, or he died throughout time, the natural causes of time. So now his minions who are still alive can revive Ganon using the dead body of Link. Now, when Ganon's revived, he turns into a human, and now you fight him throughout the next two games. And then we go to the final game in the timeline. This is going to be Spirit Tracks. Now, here's the thing, it's a direct sequel because, once again, it's Link the Fifth and the same Zelda. Also, it's a similar landscape and everything, and you're still using the Master Sword that you got in the temple that was of Hyrule in Wind Waker. So this is the last game in the timeline, so let's recap the entire timeline. At first, we have the Minish Cap. Then we go on to which explains how Link got his hat and you're using the Force Sword. Then we're going to Skyward Sword, since it talks about the creation of the Master Sword. Ocarina of Time features Link the Second as a child. And then we go to Majora's Mask, which takes place afterwards, after the kid part of it, of Ocarina of Time, where Link is searching for a long-lost friend, and Ganon is not the final boss, and is not even made reference to, nor the Triforce. Now, Twilight Princess comes next because it's the last game where Ganon's a human. Then we go on to the adult portion of Ocarina of Time, where Ganon turns into a pig. Then we go to Link to the Past, first game featuring Link the Third, and there's the introduction. Then we have Oracle of Ages and Seasons, due to the similar characters and Ganon trying to be revived again. Then we go to Link's Awakening, where Link's on the boat at the beginning, like he was at the end of Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Then we go to the Four Swords, featuring Link the Fourth, and this is the first game because he's not using the Master Sword. Then we go to Four Swords Adventures, a direct sequel featuring Ganondorf, for the first time that Link the Fourth has fought him, and also no Master Sword still. Then we go to Zelda 1, where Link the Fourth gets his Master Sword, and Ganon is no longer using the Trident. He is using his own magic now. Then we go to Zelda 2 Adventure of Link, which is the direct sequel of the game, featuring the similar landscape, and Ganon's trying to be revived again. Then we go to Wind Waker, which features Link the Fifth, the final Link in the timeline so far, where Hyrule's flooded and most of it's water, and you gotta go underwater to the flooded Hyrule to defeat Ganon, who is now a human because he was revived. Then we have Phantom Hourglass as a direct sequel due to similar landscape and characters. Then we go to Spirit Tracks, same reasons, similar characters and reasons. And I hope this cleared up any confusion. Once again, this is my own perspective on it. Debate it as you will, and I will see you guys next time, and goodbye.